Hey everyone, ready to dive in. Today we're tackling Ray Kurzweil's The Singularity is Nearer. We're going to unpack his predictions, look at the evidence, and see if this whole merging with machines thing is really around the corner or if it's still stuck in sci-fi.
It's a fascinating topic for sure.
What's wild is Kurzweil isn't just talking about, faster phones or fancier gadgets. He's saying we're on the edge of a technological earthquake, a singularity, where everything changes so fast it's almost impossible to imagine.
Right, it's not just incremental progress anymore.
Exactly. His big idea, the law of accelerating returns. You see it every year, computers getting ridiculously powerful, yet cheaper. But Kurzweil says this isn't just tech, it's happening everywhere.
It's like a universal principle, impacting every field.
Totally. Take medicine, gene editing, personalized treatments. It's incredible the leaps and bounds we're making.
And what about energy? Renewable sources are getting more efficient and cheaper all the time.
Right. Kurzweil argues it's all connected. This acceleration is happening across the board.
And what I find really intriguing is how he ties this acceleration to human intelligence itself.
Okay, yeah, explain that.
He's not just talking about AI outsmarting us, but about us actually integrating with AI. Creating a new kind of human, basically. Think about those possibilities.
So it's not about AI versus humans. It's about AI with humans.
Exactly. It's about augmenting our capabilities, pushing the boundaries of what we thought was possible.
Okay, now we're getting to the really mind-blowing part. Kurzweil predicts that by the 2030s, we'll have something called, get this, cloud-connected neocortices. It's like an extension of our brains, literally wired into the internet.
That's one of the most radical ideas he proposes.
To unpack that a bit, the neocortex is like the command center of your brain, right?
Oh.
It handles language, conscious thought, all that complex stuff.
Exactly. It's what makes us uniquely human.
And Kurzweil is suggesting we'll have a direct line from there to the cloud.
It's a pretty wild concept when you really think about it.
It's enough to make your head spin. On one hand, instant access to all the information in the world. Amazing. But on the other hand, if my brain is basically a hard drive plugged into the matrix, that's a whole other level of existence.
It certainly raises some profound questions about what it means to be human in the age of AI.
No kidding. And Kurzweil believes this isn't some distant future either. He puts a pretty bold stake in the ground, saying this singularity, this moment of radical change, will arrive by 2045.
He's quite specific about the timeline, which is interesting.
He is.
Yeah.
And he actually uses a really compelling example in the book to illustrate his point. He talks about how a single dollar can now buy you 11,200 times more computing power than it could back in 2005 when his first book on the singularity came out.
That's a concrete example of the law of accelerating returns in action.
Right. It's mind-blowing when you really stop and think about it.
And it's not just about raw computing power either. It's about the exponential growth of information itself.
So true. Think about it. A teenager today with a smartphone has access to more information than someone with a multi-thousand-dollar set of encyclopedias a few decades ago.
It's a completely different world in terms of access to knowledge.
It's wild and a little humbling when you think about all those dusty old encyclopedias. But look, it can't all be smooth sailing to this super-powered future, right? Even Kurzweil acknowledges there are some potential bumps in the road, some things we need to be cautious about.
Exactly. It's absolutely crucial to consider the potential downsides, especially the disruptions that could happen to things like our economy and society.
Because if these changes are as big as Kurzweil says they're going to be, then we need to be prepared for some major societal shifts along the way.
Absolutely. We need to be thinking now about how we're going to navigate those shifts.
It's a good thing Kurzweil is thinking about those ethical questions, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when we're talking about merging our brains with AI, it really makes you wonder, what does it even mean to be human?
Absolutely, and you're spot on to bring that up. Kurzweil really digs into what a world with cloud-connected neocortices might look and feel like. He paints this picture of a future where information's just there, right at your fingertips, communication is instantaneous, and education, even entertainment, it's all personalized and engaging.
Okay, so paint that picture for me. We're talking about a world where you could learn anything you want. Just like that, just by thinking about it.
Exactly. And imagine a world where you could experience any kind of entertainment, immersive virtual reality, interactive holographic projections, all from your living room.
That sounds amazing, but honestly, it's a little much, isn't it? What about, actually talking to people? Will we all just be plugged in, living in our own little worlds, ignoring the real world around us?
Kurzweil actually addresses that. He argues that these technologies, as wild as they seem, they'll actually make our social connections stronger.
Really? How so?
Well, imagine being able to share your thoughts and feelings with someone you love, no matter where they are in the world, instantly. Or even being able to experience the world through their senses.
So it's not about replacing real-world interactions, it's about adding to them, making them even more meaningful.
Exactly. It's about using tech to deepen our relationships, to build even stronger communities.
Okay, I get that. But let's talk about something big here. Kurzweil's whole vision of the singularity, it hinges on this idea of exponential technological growth, right? What if that growth slows down or hits a wall? What if there's just a limit to what we can do with technology?
That's a question Kurzweil definitely tackles in the book. He acknowledges that there might be physical limits to things like computing power, how small we can make things, but he also says we're nowhere close to those limits yet. He thinks new technologies, things like quantum computing, nanotechnology, have the potential to blow those limits wide open.
So even if we hit a wall in one area, there are other ways to keep pushing forward.
Exactly. Kurzweil has this unshakable belief in human ingenuity that we'll always find a way to overcome these challenges, to keep innovating.
He's definitely an optimist.
Yeah.
But what about some of those, scarier scenarios we see in sci-fi? What if AI gets so smart it decides to just get rid of humanity?
That's what Kurzweil calls the alignment problem, making sure that as AI gets more advanced, its goals stay aligned with ours.
So how do we make sure we don't end up in some Terminator situation where the machines turn on us?
It's a tough question, and there's no easy answer. Kurzweil believes that transparency is key, being able to understand how these AI systems work, and collaboration, working together to make sure AI is developed ethically and responsibly.
So it's not about being afraid of AI. It's about understanding it, guiding it.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that AI is a tool. And like any tool, it can be used for good or bad. It all comes down to the choices we make.
That's a good point. But what about some of the other big threats out there, like right now? Climate change, nuclear war. Does Kurzweil talk about those at all?
He does, and he doesn't sugarcoat it. He acknowledges that these are serious, urgent threats, things we need to deal with now. But, and this is key to Kurzweil's thinking, he believes those same technological advances driving us towards the singularity could also help us solve these problems.
Give me an example of that.
Well, take AI, for example. It could help us develop way more efficient renewable energy sources or create early warning systems for natural disasters, things like that.
So it's not a guaranteed happy ending, but there's hope that we can use our ingenuity, our creativity to get through these challenges.
Exactly. It's about recognizing both the amazing potential and the very real risks of these new technologies.
We've covered a lot of ground, haven't we? We talked about the potential benefits of the singularity, the risks, the ethical questions, how it might change our lives. But I'm still left wondering, what's the main message Kurzweil is trying to get across?
You know, I think at its core, Kurzweil's message is that we're standing on the edge of a profound change, a change so big it will challenge everything we think we know about being human. It's a future bursting with incredible promise, but also some very real dangers. And the really important part is it's up to us to shape it.
So it's not some kind of prophecy, it's a call to action.
Exactly. It's a call for all of us to really think about the future we want and then work to make it happen, to make sure technology serves humanity, not the other way around.
That's a powerful message. But let me ask you this. Do you believe it? Do you personally think the singularity will happen like Kurzweil describes?
Honestly, it's important to remember any prediction about the future is uncertain. But looking at the evidence Kurzweil lays out, I think it's pretty clear we're on a path toward a future that looks radically different from today. Whether we hit the singularity exactly as he describes it, well, that's up for debate. But I think the next few decades will be a time of incredible change and innovation, that's for sure.
So we've talked a lot about Kurzweil's vision, but I want to hear from you. What really struck you about all of this? What's your big takeaway from diving into his work?
You know, for me, it's the sheer scale of what he's talking about. He's not just saying things will be a bit different. He's talking about a fundamental shift, how we interact with technology, a change that could redefine what it means to be human, no less.
That's a good point. It's both exciting and a little scary, don't you think?
Absolutely. But I think those are exactly the kinds of ideas we need to be grappling with, even if they push us out of our comfort zones. It makes you think about the future differently, our role in shaping it.
Couldn't agree more. But one thing that stuck with me, Kurzweil seems incredibly optimistic almost through the whole book. Is there a danger in that? In being too optimistic? Could it make us blind to the downsides of such rapid change?
I see what you mean. It's important to be aware of the risks. We've talked about those. But I also think there's something powerful about Kurzweil's optimism. It reminds us that we're not powerless, we have a hand in shaping the future, and that tech can be a force for good.
Finding that balance between hope and being realistic, that's the key.
Exactly. Being aware of the challenges, but not losing sight of the incredible possibilities.
Love that. But let's get back to whether Kurzweil's predictions will actually happen. He's pretty specific about the timeline, saying the singularity hits around 2045. Is it possible he's off by a few decades, even a century?
It's always possible predictions about the future will be wrong, but I think what matters more is understanding the underlying trends, not getting too caught up in specific dates. Kurzweil's main point is that we're moving towards a future where technology is more and more central to our lives.
So even if the singularity doesn't arrive right on schedule, we're still headed towards a future that's fundamentally different from the one we know now.
Absolutely. That's why it's so important to start thinking about the implications now to make sure we're making smart choices about the kind of future we want to create.
I'm with you there. But let's be real. Some of Kurzweil's ideas are out there, kind of wild. This whole thing about merging with AI, maybe even achieving immortality, it sounds like science fiction, doesn't it?
It might seem that way now, but remember, what we once thought was science fiction often becomes reality. Look at smartphones, the internet, even space travel. These all seemed like crazy ideas at one point.
So you're saying we should take Kurzweil's predictions seriously, even the ones that sound a little crazy?
I think it's important to engage with these ideas even if they seem far-fetched. They force us to think differently, to imagine new possibilities we might not have considered before.
I like that. Speaking of new possibilities, you mentioned that Kurzweil talks about different ways of merging with AI. Cloud-connected neocortices aren't the only option, right?
Right, he also talks about whole brain emulation.
Yeah.
Basically, creating a super detailed digital copy of someone's brain, essentially uploading their consciousness into a computer.
Whoa, okay, hold on. Creating a digital copy of yourself. Would that copy really be you with your memories, your personality, or would it just be a really good imitation?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It gets into these really deep philosophical questions about consciousness, what makes us who we are. Kurzweil digs into those questions, exploring different viewpoints, and he admits we don't have all the answers yet.
So even Kurzweil, with all his predictions, acknowledges there's a lot we still don't know about the brain and how consciousness works.
Absolutely. But that's part of what makes this whole topic so captivating. We're at the very edge of what we understand, pushing the boundaries of what we thought was possible.
It's definitely a lot to think about. But I want to bring it back to our listeners for a second. Why does all of this matter to them? What's the takeaway for someone listening right now?
I think the biggest takeaway is that the future is not set in stone. We have a say in shaping it. By understanding these powerful technologies, AI, nanotech, we can start making informed decisions about the future we want to create, not just let it happen to us.
So it's not about passively waiting for the singularity. It's about actively being a part of making it happen.
Exactly. And that's something everyone can do. Educate yourself, talk about these ideas, be an advocate for responsible tech development. It all makes a difference.
I love that. That's a great call to action. And I think it's the perfect place to wrap up our deep dive into The Singularity is Nearer. We've just scratched the surface of what Kurzweil explores, but hopefully this conversation had given you a glimpse into a future that's full of both incredible promise and some big questions we need to answer. So what do you think? We want to hear your thoughts, your reactions to Kurzweil's predictions. This is a conversation we're all having together, so share your perspective. Until next time, keep those minds open and stay curious.